The king demanded to marry the lady with the worst character in the village. The reason shocked everyone. The royal guards arrived on a Tuesday morning, and they arrived loud. Their horses kicked up red dust along the narrow path that cut through Ugwuoha village, scattering chickens and sending children scrambling behind their mothers' wrappers. 7 guards in full palace regalia, riding with the kind of authority that silences even the most stubborn market woman mid-argument. People poured out of compounds, out of shops, out from behind drying lines of oso oak and ankara. Whatever they were doing before, it stopped. The captain of the guards pulled his horse to a halt at the center of the village square, right in front of the old irako tree where elders held their meetings and boys played drafts on Saturday afternoons. He unrolled a scroll, cleared his throat, and spoke in a voice that carried all the way to the last row of zinc-roofed houses. People of Ugwuoha. His Royal Highness, Ugwuoha Obiora, King of the Obiora Kingdom and Protector of the Eastern Lands, hereby announces his intention to take a wife. By his own command, he seeks not the most beautiful woman. Not the most educated. Not the most obedient. The guard paused. People leaned forward. He seeks the woman of the worst character in this village. She shall be identified and presented to the palace within 3 days. For 3 full seconds, no one spoke. Then the square exploded. Worst character, a woman shouted from the left. Has the king gone mad? Someone else cried from behind. Which kind nonsense be this? But even as the arguing began, even as voices rose and hands flew and neighbors grabbed each other by the arm to ask if they had heard correctly, even in all that chaos, there was one name already forming on people's lips. It moved through the crowd the way fire moves through dry grass. First a whisper. Then a murmur. Then people were saying it openly, some laughing, some shaking their heads, some pressing their palms to their faces in disbelief. Nkem. Na Nkem dem de tako. Who else? Who else in this village? And what the king knew about her, what nobody in that square could have imagined, would silence the entire kingdom before the week was over. Nkem Okafor had not always been a name people said with their faces twisted. There was a time, long before the guards came, long before the gossip calcified into fact, when she had been just a girl. Quiet. Observant. The kind of child who noticed things adults missed and kept the noticing to herself. But that was a long time ago. What Ugwuoha knew now was a different woman entirely. She was 26 years old and she walked through the village like she was daring someone to try her. If a market woman bumped her without apologizing, Nkem did not let it go. She would stop, turn, and say exactly what she thought in a voice that did not lower itself for anyone. When the men of the age grade tried to block the road to collect levy from passing women, the kind of thing the village had accepted for years because that was just how it was, Nkem was the one who walked straight through them, and when one of them grabbed her wrapper, she grabbed his wrist and told him, in precise detail, what she would do if he did not release her immediately. He released her. 3 months before the guards arrived, she had publicly insulted Chief Ezenwachi's son at his own introduction ceremony. The young man had made a comment, something careless, something that most women would have swallowed and buried, and Nkem had stood up at the gathering, in front of 200 guests, and she had responded. Not quietly. Not privately. In front of everyone. The engagement was called off by the following morning. The elders had summoned her. She came, sat down, crossed her legs, and looked at them with the particular expression that had become famous in the village, not angry exactly, but settled. Immovable. Like a woman who had decided long ago that she would not be frightened by the posturing of important men. They told her she was a disgrace. They told her no man would marry her. They told her she was bringing shame to her father's name. Her father had died 4 years earlier. She had taken care of him alone through 2 years of illness, selling fabric at the Ojij market every day and returning home to cook and clean and administer medicine while her 2 brothers sent money occasionally and WhatsApp messages more occasionally. After he died, The brothers had come to share the property and return to Lagos, and Nkem had remained in the village in the small house that was now technically hers, alone, with the kind of silence that only settles in a place after someone you loved has left it forever. The elders did not know this part. Or if they knew, they had arranged it neatly into a corner of their minds where it would not inconvenience their judgment. She walked out of their meeting before they were finished. They talked about her for a week afterward. She had no close friends. The women her age kept a careful distance, partly out of fear and partly because proximity to Nkem had a way of requiring you to take positions on things, and taking positions was uncomfortable. You could not be around Nkem and be neutral. She had that effect on people. She forced things into the light whether the light was wanted or not. At night, alone in her compound, she sometimes sat on the low bench outside her door and looked at the stars with an expression that her nearest neighbor, old Mama Ifeanyi, had noticed but never mentioned to anyone. It was not the face of a wicked woman. It was the face of someone carrying something very, very heavy, and carrying it so long that the weight had become part of her posture. But nobody talked about that part. What they talked about was the sharp tongue and the disrespect and the shame. And when the guards asked the villagers who among them had the worst character, the answer came fast and unanimous. The guards came to her compound on a Wednesday evening. Nkem was outside washing a pot when she heard the horses. She looked up, registered the palace uniforms, set down the pot slowly, and stood with her arms at her sides. She had learned early that the best response to intimidation was stillness. Stillness unnerved people who came prepared for drama. Nkem Okafor, the captain said. That is my name, she said. You have been chosen by His Royal Highness Ugwuoha to be his royal wife. You are to come with us. She looked at them for a long moment. Then she laughed. Not a delighted laugh. A short, hard sound, like the snap of a dry branch. Is this a joke? Who sent you people? Which chief sent you to come and disgrace me in front of my neighbors? Madam, the captain said carefully, no one is disgracing you. This is the king's command. The king's command. She said it flatly, testing how the words felt in her mouth. The king wants to marry the worst woman in the village. That is the story you are bringing to my door. She looked past them at the small crowd already gathering at her gate. She could see the faces, the smirks, the wide eyes, the hands covering mouths. Mrs. Ugwuoha from down the road with her arms folded, watching with the expression of a woman who has been waiting for this moment for years. I am not going, Nkem said. The captain cleared his throat. With respect, madam, refusal is not an option the king has made available. She looked at him steadily. Everything is an option. But they were 7. And they were the king's men. And by the time the crowd had doubled, and her neighbor Mama Ifeanyi had come to hold her hand and weep quietly, and the captain had produced a second document bearing the royal seal, Nkem understood that this was not a joke and this was not a punishment that would end by morning. She went inside. She packed one bag. She did not say goodbye to anyone. She walked out to the horses with her bag over her shoulder and her chin lifted, and she did not look at the crowd as she passed them. If they were expecting tears or protest or a performance of any kind, she was not going to provide it. Whatever was waiting for her in that palace, she would face it the way she had faced everything else. She was walking into the unknown. But she carried herself as though she had chosen every step. The palace of the Ugwuoha kingdom was not what she expected. She had imagined something cold, something designed to remind you of your smallness. Instead it was beautiful in a way that felt almost personal, wide corridors with polished floors the color of dark honey, walls hung with woven tapestries, the smell of sandalwood drifting from somewhere deep inside the building. Servants moved quietly through the hallways, their slippers making no sound. They gave her a room that was larger than the entire front half of her compound in Ugwuoha. She sat on the edge of the bed and looked around at the carved wooden furniture, the window that looked out over a garden she could not have imagined, the bowl of fruit on the table and the small electric fan in the corner, and she felt something she had not expected to feel. She felt afraid. Not of the palace. Not of what the king might do. She was afraid of the kindness. The consideration. The way they had handled her bag without being asked, the way the woman who showed her to the room had spoken to her with a kind of careful warmth, as though Nkem were something that might break if handled roughly. Nobody had treated her like something that might break in a very long time. It did not feel safe. It felt like a trick. She did not sleep that first night. She met the king the next morning. He came to the courtyard where she was sitting alone, before breakfast, trying to make sense of her situation. He was taller than she had imagined, and younger. Perhaps 32 or 33. He wore simple clothes, no regalia, no beads, and he walked without the performance that powerful men usually carried with them everywhere. He sat down across from her without asking permission, rested his arms on his knees, and looked at her directly. "You are not happy to be here," he said. "That is an understatement," she replied. "Good. Honest people are easier to work with." He paused. "How was your night?" "Why am I here?" she asked. She had decided she would not do small talk. She had nothing to lose by being direct. She had nothing to lose, full stop. He looked at her steadily. "I will tell you. But not today. Give me time. I was not given time when your guards came to my compound." "I know," he said. And something moved across his face, something quick, something that looked, for just a moment, like guilt. Then it was gone. "I apologize for that. I will explain everything. I promise you." She studied him. She had a gift for detecting lies. She had built it over years of needing to know who to trust and almost always discovering the answer was no one. She looked at him the way she looked at everything, without the softness that hope puts over people's eyes. And she could not find the lie. That bothered her more than if she had found it. The first week was strange. Nkem moved through the palace with the wariness of someone who has walked into a trap and is waiting for it to close. She snapped at a serving girl who accidentally knocked over her water. She refused to attend 2 meals because she did not like being stared at by the palace staff. When one of the elder chiefs came to inspect her and made a comment about her bearing, she looked at him calmly and told him that his opinion of her bearing was something she would spend zero time thinking about, and he could find his way back to wherever he came from. The palace staff whispered. The elders shook their heads. Everyone waited for the king to react, to punish her, to correct her, to at least show some displeasure. He did none of these things. He sat across from her at dinner and asked about her fabric business. He walked with her in the garden in the evenings and pointed out plants she had never seen, telling her their names in Igbo and Latin and sometimes Yoruba. He brought her books, real ones, not the kind given to impress. One of them was about women in pre-colonial Igbo society who had held political power. She read it in 2 days. She did not know what to do with any of this. One evening, almost 2 weeks into her strange new life, he found her sitting alone in the garden after dark. She had not heard him come. She was looking at the flowers and her face had done the thing it sometimes did when she was alone, it had let go of its hardness, just briefly. When she heard his footstep and turned, it locked back into place. But he had seen it. She could tell he had seen it by the careful way he sat down. "You don't have to do that with me," he said. "Do what?" "Put it back. Whatever you just took off your face." She stared at him. The anger rose, the familiar, protective anger that had never once failed to keep people at a safe distance. "Do not speak to me like you know me," she said. "You don't know me. You chose me as some kind of experiment and I am still waiting to understand why, and I am very tired of waiting." "I know," he said, quietly. "Then tell me." He was silent for a moment. The garden smelled of night flowers. Somewhere in the distance a generator hummed. And then he said, "Do you remember the night of the Okonkwo land dispute? 12 years ago. You were 14. Everything inside her went very still. You were coming back from your cousin's house, he said. You took the path behind the community hall. And you saw something you were not supposed to see. She did not speak. Her hands, resting on her knees, had become very tight. You saw Chief Dim and Chief Ezenwachi and 2 others. They were with your father. And they were threatening him. Telling him to sign over the piece of land that your grandfather had left your family. Land that those men wanted for their building project. He paused. You saw your father crying. You saw him sign the papers. And then you ran, because Chief Dim saw you and called to you. But you kept running. The night air seemed to have gotten heavier. Nkem was looking at the flowers but she was not seeing them. You tried to tell people, the king continued. You told your teacher. She told you to be careful. You told the Anglican pastor. He said he would look into it. You told one of the age grade leaders. He told your father what you had said, and your father came home that night and told you, with fear in his eyes, never to mention it again. That those men would hurt you. That there was nothing to be done. She turned to look at him then. Her eyes were dry. She had stopped crying over this a very long time ago. You were 14, he said. And you learned that night that the truth was a dangerous thing. That the people who were supposed to protect you would not. That speaking cost you more than it gained you. And so you stopped speaking softly. He looked at her. You found a different way to survive. You made yourself into something people were afraid of. Something that no one could dismiss or threaten or pressure. Because they had already shown you what happened to the version of you that was gentle. The silence stretched between them. Who told you? She finally asked. I was there, he said. She stared at him. Not with the chiefs. I was 16. My father was already king, and he had brought me to observe a land negotiation. He wanted me to understand how disputes were handled. We arrived just after it was done. I saw the papers. I saw your father. I saw you on the path, only for a second, but I saw your face before you ran. He exhaled slowly. I saw everything and I said nothing. I was 16 and I told myself it was not my business. That I did not have enough facts. That I would speak when I knew more. He shook his head. I never spoke. And for 12 years I watched what it cost you. She was looking at him with an expression he could not fully read. I watched from reports, he said. Village news travels. I heard about your father's land. I heard about his illness and how you cared for him alone. I heard about every incident they blamed you for, the fights, the confrontations, and I knew, because I had seen your face that night, what each of those incidents actually was. He met her eyes. It was you refusing to be silenced in the only way they had left you. You didn't come, she said. Her voice was low. Not accusing. Just factual. For 12 years. You didn't come. No, he said. I didn't come. And now you want to restore my dignity. The edge had returned to her voice, but it was different now. Not the armor. Something raw. You want to give me a palace and a title and you think that fixes it? No, he said simply. I don't think it fixes it. But I think justice has a shape, and one of its shapes is this. I think you deserve for those men to answer for what they did. I think you deserve for this village to see you as what you are. I think you deserved that 12 years ago, and I failed to give it to you then. He looked at her without looking away. I am not asking you to forgive me. I am telling you the truth. And I am asking you to let me do now what I should have done then. She was quiet for a long time. A very long time. Long enough that the night settled completely around them and the generator somewhere in the distance cycled off and the garden filled with the sounds of crickets and distant traffic. You did not marry me, she said at last. You have not even asked me. You had me brought here. Yes, he said. That was wrong. I am sorry. If I choose to leave tomorrow morning, will you stop me? No. She looked at him one more time. Then she looked back at the flowers. Tell me the rest of it, she said. Tell me what you plan to do. And he told her everything. What happened next moved through the Ugwuoha kingdom like a second harmattan, dry and fast and stripping everything down to what it truly was. The king called a formal gathering. Not just the elders of Ugwuoha. He called chiefs from 3 villages, community leaders, the local government chairman, reporters from 2 newspapers. He had spent months assembling it, the land documents, the original records, the signatures, a sworn testimony from a man who had been present that night and had carried the guilt for a decade, waiting for the moment someone with power would give him permission to speak. Nkem sat beside the king when the truth was read aloud. She wore deep blue osso oak and she sat with her back straight and her hands still and her face, finally, showing something other than armor. Not softness. Not vulnerability. Something better. Clarity. The face of a woman who has carried a weight for so long that when it is lifted, she is not weakened. She is enormous. Chief Dim was in the gathering. So was Chief Ezenwachi. So was the age-grade leader who had reported Nkem's words to her father 12 years ago. They had come expecting a routine ceremony. They sat in their seats while the documents were read and the testimony was given and the entire assembled crowd turned to look at them, and they did not have anywhere to go. There was a moment, brief, sharp, when Chief Ezenwachi tried to speak, to offer an explanation, to fold the story into something more forgiving of himself. The king looked at him once, without expression, and he stopped. The gathering ended. The consequences began. They were slow and formal and thorough in the way that justice, when it finally comes, tends to be. Land documents were reviewed by the state authorities. Investigations were opened. The men who had built their comfort on the backs of threats and silence found that the silence was over. The village of Ugwuoha felt the shift before they fully understood it. News traveled back, as it always did, and people stood in the same square where the guards had made their announcement and they talked about what they had refused to see. Mothers who had warned their daughters away from Nkem stood in their kitchens and said nothing to their husbands. The woman who had watched with folded arms from the gate as Nkem was taken away sat with her hands in her lap and looked at the floor. Some of them came to the palace. Some of them sent word. Some of them could not bring themselves to do either, but they stopped sleeping easily, and perhaps that was its own kind of accounting. Nkem received the ones who came. She sat with them in a room off the main hall, dressed simply, and she listened to what they said with the full attention she had always been capable of and had spent years weaponizing. When they asked for forgiveness, she did not rush to give it. She asked questions. She required understanding, not just apology. Not because she wanted to make them suffer, but because she had learned, at 14, at 16, at 20, all the way up, that forgiveness handed out without comprehension was just another way of making the uncomfortable person comfortable while the wrong person absorbed the weight. She was done absorbing weight that did not belong to her. What she asked for, from the village and from the chiefs and from the man who had stayed silent for a decade, was not punishment. She had thought about punishment, on the long. Breathing and the knowledge of everything that had been taken. She had imagined it in detail. It had not made her feel better. What she asked for was acknowledgement. Real acknowledgement. The kind that costs something. The kind that changes something about how people move through the world afterward. She asked that the community fund her father's memorial. She asked that the land dispute be taught in the village school as a lesson in what community silence enables. She asked that 2 of the men make formal public statements, not apologies read from papers, but statements in their own words, their own voices, that said plainly what they had done and what it had cost another person. These were not small requests. Some of them balked. One of the chiefs sent intermediaries suggesting she might prefer a monetary settlement. She sent the intermediaries back with a message so crisp and precise that it apparently rendered the chief unable to speak for several minutes. In the end, they did what she asked. Not perfectly. not without the stiffness of men unaccustomed to accountability. But they did it. She and the king were married in the dry season, in a ceremony that was neither small nor ostentatious. She wore coral beads that had belonged to her mother, and she danced in the way that women in her family had always danced at weddings, full-bodied, unhurried, deeply present. Her brothers came from Lagos. They had complicated faces for most of the ceremony. She was kind to them in a way that was also, unmistakably, a kind of boundary, and they seemed to understand this and accept it. She became, in time, a queen who was known in the kingdom for the particular way she listened to people who came before the palace with complaints. She had a gift for it. Not the listening of someone who is waiting for you to finish, but the listening of someone who has been in the room you are describing and knows exactly where the cold comes from. Women came to her with the things they had been told were too small for official attention. She made them large. She made them visible. She had, after all, spent 12 years learning every way that a thing could be made invisible, and she had survived every one of them. She did not become gentle. She was not the woman she might have been if none of it had happened. She had thought about that woman sometimes, when she was alone, had wondered what she would have looked like, what her laugh would have been like, whether she would have been easier. She made peace with not knowing. She was the woman she was. She had been built by fire and she had the tensile strength of something built by fire, and she chose to use it in the direction of people who needed someone to stand in front of the flame on their behalf. The king watched her the way he had always watched her, with attention, and with something that had been guilt once and slowly became something else. Pride, perhaps. Or simply the deep recognition of a person who, having failed someone, was given the extraordinary chance to witness them be fully themselves, and found themselves undone by it. And Ugwuoha, over time, had to rearrange something in its memory. The story it had told about Nkem, the one about the cursed woman, the woman with the worst character, the woman no man would marry, that story had to be taken down and set aside and replaced with the one that was actually true. The story of a girl who had seen something she was not supposed to see. Who had tried to tell the truth and been stopped at every turn. Who had done what humans do when their softness is not safe, she had grown a different kind of skin. And when someone had finally looked at that skin and asked what it was protecting, she had shown him. And the answer had been worth the wait. Sometimes the loudest anger hides the deepest pain. If this story moved something in you, if it made you think about the people in your life who carry things nobody asks about, please like this video. Subscribe so you do not miss the next one. And tell me in the comments, would you have forgiven them? Or would you have done what many people only dream of doing? Leave your answer below. I genuinely want to read it.